Everyone envied me for having a devoted and considerate fiancée. And she was also Willow Liu, the daughter of the top-tier elite Liu family. But when my father advised me to give up the engagement to his illegitimate son, Makoto, I agreed without hesitation, took the money, and walked away. That was because I had been reborn. In my previous life, Makoto caused a huge scene at our wedding. Seeing that Willow remained unmoved, he ultimately jumped into the sea in front of everyone. But who would have thought that 3 years later, I would see Willow and Makoto appearing together on the street. Not only were they acting intimately, they were also holding a child. Only then did I realize that her apparent devotion was just a facade. Behind my back, she had long since built a family with him. However, before I could rush up to confront them, I was sent flying by an out-of-control truck. At the final moment as my consciousness faded, I had only one thought. If there is another life, I will definitely take the money and run away, and fulfill Willow and Makoto, this pair of lovers. Chapter 1. George, I'm not asking you to hand the engagement over to Makoto for nothing. You'll be compensated. Of course. The familiar voice coiled around my ears, struggling out of a tearing, splitting pain. I forced my eyes open, and in a daze, I realized something unbelievable. I had been reborn. Back to 1 month before my marriage to Willow. When I lowered my gaze, I met my father's tightly furrowed brow. That earnest, long-suffering expression was exactly the same as in my memories when he had pressured me into giving up the engagement. Fine. My voice was hoarse as I abruptly cut him off. My father froze, then looked up at me. Unconcealed joy burst into his eyes. George, you've finally come to your senses. A trace of cold mockery flashed through my eyes. I curled my lips into a faint, sarcastic smile. I want 1 billion. 1 billion. Are you out of your mind? Before I could finish, my father's face had already turned a livid purple, the veins at his temples throbbing violently. I smoothed my shirt, there wasn't even a wrinkle to fix, and leisurely completed the rest of my sentence. And severing all ties between us as father and son, my father's expression changed instantly. His finger shook as he pointed at me. You ungrateful bastard. Do you even know what you're saying? Of course I do. I lifted my eyes, bone-deep hatred churning within them. From the day you cheated during my mother's pregnancy and caused her and the unborn child to die together, you stopped deserving to be my father. After all, the only son you acknowledge is Makoto. For him, you're even forcing me to give up the Liu family engagement. In that case, what difference does it make whether this father-son relationship exists or not? 2 conditions. I leaned forward slightly, impatience creeping into my tone. Miss either one, and it's a no. So, do you agree or not? My father's face turned iron blue, his chest heaving with anger. After a long while, he finally ground out through clenched teeth. Fine, we'll cut ties, just don't regret it. I'll need some time to prepare the 1 billion, but I have a condition too. The Liu family's heir cares far too much about you. To ensure Makoto can smoothly marry into the Liu family, you must leave the country within a month and never come back. My heart jolted violently at his words. I couldn't tell whether it was because my father was willing to go to such lengths for Makoto, or because of that sentence. The Liu family's heir cares far too much about you. I tugged at the corner of my mouth, my voice so soft it was almost inaudible. She doesn't care about me at all. What did you say? My father didn't hear clearly and instinctively pressed. I lowered my eyes, hiding the chill within them. My tone flat and calm. Nothing. Within a month. Transfer the 1 billion to my account. I'll take care of all the paperwork and disappear completely from your lives. With that, I turned and walked out. Just as I reached the doorway, I saw Willow and Makoto approaching side by side. They were chatting and laughing, intimate and close. I still remembered the first time Willow met Makoto. Those icy eyes of hers were filled with pure disgust. When Makoto tried to sidle up to her, she grabbed him by the throat with one hand, nearly suffocating him, and warned coldly, "Stay away from me." But now, she looked at him with tenderness brimming in her eyes. So it turned out that even back then, her heart had already tilted toward Makoto. It felt as if my heart were being torn apart by invisible hands, the pain leaving my limbs numb. Memories from my past life surged in like a tidal wave. Back then, my mother had been forced to her death along with her unborn child. My father brought his mistress and illegitimate son straight into the Wang household, while I lived there like a rat in a gutter. It was Willow, already bound to me by engagement, who stormed into the Wang family alone and pulled me out of a pitch-dark confinement room, my body covered in wounds. From that day on, Willow Liu and the Liu family behind her became the only lifeline I had while drowning. She sheltered me forcefully under her wings. The Wang family feared the Liu family's power, yet also coveted the marriage that could elevate them further. More than once, they instigated the idea of replacing me with Makoto. How could I possibly agree? The Wang family was already far beneath the Liu family. This engagement had been exchanged through the deep friendship between my mother and Willow's mother. It was the last remaining trace my mother left in this world. No matter how my father threatened or tempted me, I pushed back every single time. unwilling to accept it. Makoto even pretended to have been drugged and snuck into Willow's room, only to be mercilessly thrown out by her. On the wedding day itself, Makoto went as far as threatening suicide. He clung to her leg, crying and refusing to let go, and finally jumped into the sea in front of everyone, leaving no body behind. I thought that with Makoto gone, I could finally live a peaceful life with Willow. For 3 years after the wedding, they truly were loving, until the day I saw Willow on the street, holding Makoto intimately in her arms, with a 2-year-old child beside them. Only then did I realize Makoto hadn't died at all. She had hidden him away somewhere, and they even had a child together. Before I could rush forward to confront them, an out-of-control truck came crashing toward me. In the crushing agony as my body was torn apart, I saw Willow look in my direction. In those eyes that once brimmed with tenderness, there was nothing left but cold indifference. In the final moment before my consciousness faded, I had only one thought. If there is a next life, I will definitely fulfill Willow and Makoto. This pair of true lovers. I don't want Willow's love anymore, love that was mixed with lies. George. Willow's voice yanked me out of those suffocating memories. When she saw me, a brilliant smile bloomed instantly across her face. The light in her eyes was dazzling, as if I were her entire world. I had once believed in that gaze without question, but it was those same eyes that later looked at Makoto with identical tenderness. As usual, Willow reached out to take my hand. There's only 1 month left until our wedding. I came to pick you up to try on wedding outfits. I stared at the hand she extended, yet in my mind flashed the image of those fair, slender fingers hooking around Makoto's arm. My heart clenched sharply. Without a word, I sidestepped to avoid her hand, responding with a cool and walked straight ahead. Willow froze for a moment, staring at her empty hand. She didn't think much of it, assuming I was just in a bad mood, and quickly turned to chase after me. As we passed Makoto, he suddenly reached out and lightly tugged at my sleeve, his voice timid and hesitant. Brother, can I go with you to try on the outfits? I looked into his eyes, full of carefully disguised caution, and suddenly smiled. Sure, no. 2 voices rang out at the same time. Willow stared at me in shock, confusion written all over her face. George, don't you hate him the most? Why? I sneered inwardly. Why? Of course it was because in 1 month, the person standing beside her in wedding attire would only be Makoto. Chapter 2. The Rolls-Royce sped down the road. Willow glanced at Makoto in the passenger seat, then leaned close to my ear and lowered her voice. George, why did you suddenly decide to bring him along? I looked at her furrowed brows. When she mentioned Makoto, the familiar impatience was written all over her face, as if she truly found him unbearably annoying. She acted too well, so well that in my previous life, I had been deceived for a full 3 years, until I saw that 2-year-old child on the street and realized this relationship had long since rotted to the core. I lowered my eyes, my voice calm and flat. Don't you always complain that he's clingy? Let him see with his own eyes that you're marrying me. Maybe then he'll finally give up. A fleeting trace of awkwardness flashed across Willow's face. Her lips moved as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she said nothing, silently accepting the explanation. When we arrived, she led me into the bridal boutique. Makoto followed closely behind us. The custom wedding suit had been finalized long ago, a perfectly tailored white suit, the fabric looking exceptionally luxurious under the lights. The staff had just brought the suit out when, before I could even raise my hand, Makoto rushed forward first. He gently brushed his fingers over the rhinestones, his eyes filled with envy. After a long moment, he turned to look at me and asked, Brother, can I try it on? Watching his deliberately innocent act, I sneered inwardly. The engagement could be given up, but what belonged to me? Why should I hand it over so easily? My thin lips parted, and I mocked him mercilessly. Your mom being a mistress wasn't enough. What, now you want to be one too? Makoto's face turned deathly pale in an instant. He looked at Willow timidly, his eyes shimmering with a plea for help. Willow's expression darkened as well. She slightly shifted her body to stand between us, reaching out to gently push my arm, her tone carrying a hint of placation. George, don't make a scene. People are watching. Go try it on and see if it fits. That seemingly mediating gesture, however, placed Makoto squarely behind her, protected. I looked at her tense posture, the corners of my mouth curling into a cold smile. Taking the suit, I turned and went into the fitting room. Standing in front of the mirror after changing into the suit, I felt momentarily dazed. The man in the mirror had sharp features, his refined look set off by the white suit. The last time I stood here, my heart had been full of hope for the future, but now, in the mirror, there was nothing left in my eyes but desolation. Ouch! Makoto's cry of pain suddenly came from outside. I reached out and pulled the curtain open just a crack. I saw Makoto trip over his own feet and fall straight into Willow's arms. Not only did she not dodge, she reached out and caught him steadily. Her palm even gently patted his back, the way one would soothe a frightened little animal. Even though I already knew her heart wasn't with me, Seeing this with my own eyes still made my vision ache as if needles were stabbing into it. I remembered clearly, before, if Makoto so much as brushed the corner of her sleeve, she would throw the clothes into a fire basin in front of everyone and coldly spit out a single word, dirty. But now, she was tenderly comforting the person in her arms. The two of them stood pressed close together, looking far more like a couple than me, the official boyfriend standing alone in the fitting room. My grip on the curtain tightened more and more. It felt as if something were clenching my heart violently. Sharp pain surging through my chest. I took a deep breath and was just about to pull the curtain open when the world suddenly began to spin. Everything in the room shook violently. An earthquake. The thought had barely flashed through my mind when my first instinct was to run outside. But the suit pants didn't fit properly. I wasn't paying attention and got tripped up, crashing hard onto the floor. The skin on my arm scraped open, blood seeping out. Debris fell from above and struck me, the pain draining all color from my face. Yet Willow, only a few steps away from me, seemed not to see me at all. She grabbed Makoto and carefully rushed toward the exit. As they ran past me and moved farther away, their fading conversation drifted into my ears. Willow, don't worry about me. My brother is still inside. He can get out on his own. Your leg is hurt. I'll take you out first. Those words pierced my heart like a blade, leaving me nearly unable to breathe. I didn't know how much time passed before the shaking finally stopped. The shop was in ruins, exactly like my heart at that moment. I took off the suit, grabbed a pair of scissors nearby, and shredded it piece by piece. Before leaving, I coldly told the stunned staff, don't tell Willow. If Makoto wanted to take my place, I wouldn't stop him. But anything that belonged to me, George, even if I destroyed it myself, I would never give to that man and woman. Leaving the bridal shop, I went straight to the immigration office, submitted my documents, and applied for expedited processing. The staff glanced at the injury on my arm, nodded, and said, the procedures will be completed within a month. Standing at the entrance, I took a deep breath and looked up at the gray, overcast sky. In 1 month, I would finally leave the city completely, and go live a life that truly belonged to me. Chapter 3. I didn't go back to the Wang residence. Instead, I went straight to the small apartment I had bought for myself. By the time I threw myself onto the soft bed, it was already late at night outside the window. From the afternoon until now, Willow hadn't contacted me once. Not a single word of concern, not half an explanation. She didn't even ask how I was. I stared at my phone screen for a long time, so long that my eyes began to sting, before suddenly flinging the phone aside, closing my eyes, and falling into a heavy sleep. Early the next morning, before I was fully awake, a burst of noisy commotion jolted me up. When I went out to check, I saw Willow directing people as they carried things into the apartment. The moment she saw me, Willow hurried over, grabbed my hand, and plastered her face with apology. George, I'm sorry. There was an emergency at the company yesterday, so I had to leave first and didn't get the chance to tell you. I only found out later that there was an earthquake. You weren't hurt, were you? I looked at the woman in front of me, lying without even changing her expression. My heart felt like it was being pricked by countless fine needles, pain spreading bit by bit. She clearly knew she owed me an explanation yesterday, yet deliberately used such a lie to cover up the fact that she had abandoned me at the earthquake scene. I couldn't understand it. Since she was already in love with someone else, why insist on marrying me? Did she think I was easy to fool? Or did she simply enjoy a life of keeping a faithful partner at home while flirting freely outside? Seeing me remain silent, Willow sighed, raised her hand to rub my hair, and softened her voice as she coaxed me. I know you like these things. I bought you quite a few watches and accessories. Consider it an apology. Don't be mad at me, okay? I pressed my lips together. Just as the word okay was about to leave my mouth, a sharp phone ringtone suddenly rang out. Willow answered the call. I didn't know what the other person said, but her expression changed slightly. She looked at me with a hint of difficulty. George, something urgent came up at the company. I won't stay with you. I have to go first. She didn't even wait for my response before rushing out the door. The apartment instantly fell quiet, leaving only the sounds of staff moving things in and out. I didn't know how much time passed before my phone let out a soft ding. I picked it up and saw that Makoto had posted a WeChat Moments update. In the photo was a pile of expensive watches and accessories. In one corner, a fair, delicate hand appeared casually, with a ring on the middle finger, one I recognized all too well. Those accessories were exactly the same as the ones Willow had given me today. That ring was the matching one to the ring on my own middle finger. That was Willow's hand. My eyes burned with soreness. It felt as though my heart was being crushed by a massive hand, making even breathing difficult. So a person's love really could be split in two. So Willow's love had never been exclusive. Mr. Wang, everything has been placed here. Please take a look. The staff's voice pulled me back to reality. I stared fixedly at the accessories on the table. Suddenly, I forced out a smile and said to the staff, help me sell them. Leave nothing behind. If it wasn't something meant only for me, I didn't want it. Not long after the gifts were dealt with, Willow's call came through. I hung up. She called again. After several attempts, she finally stopped and only sent a message. If you don't like these, I'll take you to pick something yourself another day. I glanced at it and didn't reply. Instead, I found the name of a longtime friend in my contacts and asked to meet. I was about to leave anyway. No matter what, I should properly say goodbye to my friend. In the evening, I changed clothes and went to a bar. My friend David was already there. When he heard I was going abroad, his face first filled with shock, then he immediately asked about Willow and me. After a few drinks, I lowered my eyes and said calmly, I gave up the engagement. Are you insane? David shot upright, his voice rising sharply. That's Willow. She treats you. How she treats me doesn't matter anymore. I cut him off, my hoarse voice soft as I shook my head. I'm not crazy. The image of Makoto holding a child, with Willow leaning against his side, flashed through my mind again. It was like a thorn, stabbing into my chest and tightening my heart. An unfaithful woman. I, George, have no interest in that. David tried to persuade me further, but I stood up. I'm going to the restroom. As I passed by a private room, a familiar female voice drifted out from inside. I halted in my tracks and looked through the half-open door. There sat Willow in the main seat, her face obscured by dim lighting, and right beside her was Makoto, dressed in a white shirt. Chapter 4. It felt like a thunderbolt striking me head-on, judging by how familiar Makoto looked, laughing and joking with Willow's group of friends. This was clearly not their first time together. When had Willow brought him into her inner circle? I hadn't known a thing. When those people used to grin and call me brother-in-law, were they secretly mocking me in their hearts, laughing at how I didn't even realize the person sleeping beside me had already changed her heart? My fingernails dug almost into my flesh as I stared fixedly at the scene inside the private room. They were playing truth or dare. The bottle stopped steadily in front of Makoto. The dare seemed a bit difficult. The crowd immediately started heckling, urging him to drink instead. Makoto blinked and looked toward Willow. Without a second thought, she picked up a glass from the table, tilted her head back, and drained it in one go. When she set the glass down, she swept a warning glance at the others, her tone clearly protective. That's enough. Makoto's in poor health. Don't push him. The moment her words fell, a wave of ambiguous laughter followed. After several more rounds, the bottle pointed at Makoto again. He still chose dare. This time, the task was to ask the person beside him for an item. Makoto cast a timid glance at Willow and pointed at the wooden bead bracelet on her wrist. Willow, can you give me that? My gaze nailed itself to that bracelet. I had given it to her. It was the only keepsake my mother had left me. I watched with my own eyes as Willow rubbed the wooden beads twice. Then, without the slightest hesitation, took it off and handed it to Makoto. A chill surged from the soles of my feet straight to the top of my head. My entire body began to tremble uncontrollably. I still remembered what I'd said when I personally fastened the bracelet onto her wrist. This is the most precious thing I have. Willow. Back then, Willow had smiled and patted my head. Since it's from you, George, I'll wear it forever. In my previous life, when I noticed she wasn't wearing it anymore and asked about it, she had only said, I was afraid of damaging it, so I put it away. Because of that single sentence, I never pressed further. I never imagined she had already given it to the person I hated the most. I couldn't endure it any longer. I shoved the private room door open. My eyes were bloodshot as I stared straight at Willow and demanded, Willow, if you don't value my mother's keepsake, then give it back to me. What right do you have to give it to Makoto? The noisy room froze instantly. Everyone was stunned by my sudden intrusion. Willow's pupils shrank sharply. A flicker of panic crossed her face as she hurried over to me. George, it's not what you think. Then what is it? I didn't listen at all. I sidestepped her and reached for the bracelet in Makoto's hand. Makoto reacted quickly and hid behind Willow, timidly tugging at her clothes. Willow froze for a moment, then instinctively stepped in between us. It felt as if something heavy smashed into my heart. I looked at Willow, my voice trembling. You're protecting him, Willow. You know exactly whose son he is, and you're still protecting him. Willow pressed her lips together and explained softly, George, I didn't tell you before because I was afraid you'd misunderstand. Makoto once saved me, and it left him with lasting health issues. I know you hate his mother, but Makoto, he's not the same as her. What does that have to do with me? I snapped angrily. If you want to repay a favor, do it yourself. Why should you use my things to play the gracious benefactor? Give my things back to me. Makoto shrank his neck, his voice trembling with tears. But Willow gave it to me. I really like it. He tugged at Willow's sleeve. This is the first time I've liked something this much. Once something is given away, how can you just take it back? As he spoke, he covered his chest and coughed lightly. The private room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Willow frowned, reached out to gently help Makoto catch his breath, then turned to me and spoke slowly. George, let him have it. Those few words were light and casual, yet they stabbed into my heart like a blade. I didn't retreat a single step. My eyes were so red they felt ready to split open. Willow, you know exactly what that is. That's my mother's keepsake. You're giving it to the son of the person who caused her death. Do you want her to have no peace even in the afterlife? Willow's lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but Makoto's soft coughing interrupted her. Supporting himself on Willow's arm, Makoto walked toward me with tear-filled eyes and held the bracelet out. If Big Brother really wants it, I'll give it back to you. Just as I reached out to take it, Makoto suddenly grabbed my wrist and threw himself backward. The bracelet slipped from my palm, arced through the air, and fell to the ground with a sharp clack. Chapter 5. I watched helplessly as the bracelet hit the ground. The string snapped, and the wooden beads scattered everywhere. Amid the chaos, someone stepped on them. Several beads were crushed into powder on the spot. I stood there in a daze, staring at the shattered fragments, completely unaware that Willow had bent down to help Makoto up. The noise around me suddenly felt distant. Only the constant buzzing in my ears was piercing, and everything before my eyes seemed to sway, unreal and impossible to grasp. Willow held Makoto protectively in her arms and lowered her head to ask him, "Are you hurt?" When Makoto gently shook his head, she finally turned to me with a frown, suppressed anger lacing her voice. "George, he was already willing to give it back to you. Why did you still push him?" Those words were like a needle, violently piercing through my numbness. My gaze slowly dropped to Willow's feet. A wooden bead, crushed to pieces, was embedded in the sole of her shoe. With a loud bang, my last shred of reason snapped. Before anyone could react, I grabbed a wine bottle from the table and smashed it hard against Makoto's head. Ah! Screams instantly erupted. Blood streamed down Makoto's forehead, dyeing his shirt red in an instant. His eyes lost focus from the pain. Through the crimson haze before him, I grabbed another bottle. This time, Willow finally reacted. She seized my wrist and pressed it down hard, her face terrifyingly cold. "George, have you lost your mind? You actually dared to hurt someone." I let out a cold laugh, my voice soaked in hatred. "He destroyed my mother's keepsake. Even killing him wouldn't calm my anger." Only then did Willow glance at the broken beads on the floor. After one look, she shouted harshly, "The bracelet breaking is your own fault. If you hadn't pushed him, would it have shattered? I've spoiled you too much, that's why you're this lawless." Each sentence stabbed straight into my heart. It wasn't the first time I'd clashed with Makoto. Every single time before, Willow would smile and say, "Do whatever you want, I've got your back." But now, she said I was lawless. My eyes burned red as I suddenly laughed aloud. "If I was spoiled, it was because you indulged me. What, do you regret it now?" Willow's expression darkened to the extreme. "If I'd known you'd turn out like this, I should have disciplined you properly back then." Before she could finish speaking, a muffled groan came from behind her. Makoto's body went limp, and he completely passed out. Willow hurriedly pulled him into her arms, tossing out a cold, "I'll deal with you later." She lifted Makoto sideways and slammed straight into me as she walked past. I was knocked violently to the ground. My lower back slammed into the corner of the table, and tears burst out instantly from the pain. But Willow, holding Makoto, didn't even look back. She walked away as if I didn't exist. My vision went dark. I watched the hem of her clothes disappear at the end of the corridor, all the strength draining from my body. With things having escalated this far, the others didn't dare stay any longer. One by one, they slipped away. Soon, the private room was left with only me. I crawled on the floor for a long time before finally finding 2 intact beads. I carefully clenched them in my palm. My chest felt like it was being torn apart, but I gritted my teeth and refused to cry, because no one would feel sorry for me. Crying was useless. I didn't know how long I sat there before David came looking for me. He looked at the mess all over the floor, opened his mouth as if to ask something, but when he met my eyes, he swallowed the words back. He simply helped me up and took me back to my apartment. After saying goodbye to David, I walked to the apartment entrance and saw a dark figure standing there. Hearing the noise, the person turned around. It was Willow. We stood in silence for a long while before Willow finally spoke hoarsely. "I called the police." My breath caught. I stared at her in disbelief. "What do you mean?" "I can't control you anymore, so I'll let others teach you a lesson." Willow's voice was icy to the bone. "Intentional assault. 3 days of detention. George, take these 3 days and reflect properly." Chapter 6. I spent 3 days locked in detention, and 3 days being tortured. The inmates in my cell seemed to have received someone's instructions. They took turns tormenting me in every way imaginable. On the first day, I was cornered in the restroom. Their punches landed only where clothes could hide the bruises, beating me until I curled up on the floor, shaking in pain. On the second day, they forced me to kneel on the icy concrete floor without permission. I wasn't allowed to get up. My legs swelled red and numb from kneeling so long that I could barely stand afterward. On the third day, they brought a lunchbox mixed with trash. When I refused to eat it, they pinned my head down and forced the food into my mouth. Sharp fragments tore my throat. and the metallic taste of blood spread across my tongue. The man leading them patted my face, malice hidden in his smile. Who told you to offend someone you shouldn't have? Someone specifically told us to take good care of you. My eyes burned red. My whole body felt like it was falling apart, my temples throbbing with pain. Willow said she wanted to discipline me. So this was her discipline. When she stopped loving someone, she could really be this cruel. 3 days later, when the guard opened the cell door, I could barely stand. I was covered in injuries and couldn't even walk straight. Stepping out of the police station, the midday sun stabbed into my eyes. I swayed, and finally couldn't hold on anymore, collapsing straight to the ground. When I opened my eyes again, the sharp scent of disinfectant filled my nose. George, do you know you were wrong this time? Willow's calm voice came from beside me. I turned my head mechanically, tugged at the corner of my mouth, my voice hoarse and laced with mockery. Willow, was your lesson thorough enough? Do you want to lock me up again? Willow frowned tightly, anger flaring in her chest. I just wanted you to learn some rules in there, and you couldn't take it. Then when you smashed a bottle over Makoto's head, did you ever think about whether he could take it? I looked at her and felt only absurdity. What she had done to me, was it really less than that one bottle? It was far worse. Yet the way she said it, it sounded as if she thought the punishment had been too light. The hand hidden beneath the blanket clenched tightly, my nails digging into my flesh. The pain made my mind go blank. I bit my lips until they turned pale, and suddenly, I didn't have the strength to argue anymore. I turned my head back to stare at the ceiling and said softly, "Thank you for the lesson. I know I was wrong. You can go. I want to rest." Seeing the once willful me suddenly give in, a flicker of surprise passed through Willow's eyes. She pressed her lips together, her tone softening a little. "George, be good. Don't make trouble anymore. In a few days, it'll be your mother's Memorial Day. Take care of yourself. When you're discharged, I'll go with you." As she spoke, she stood up and reached to tuck in the blanket for me. I abruptly pulled the blanket away and turned toward the wall, my refusal unmistakable. Willow's hand froze in midair. After a pause, she said nothing more, only sighed and turned to leave. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. During those 3 days, Makoto's WeChat moments updated with unusual frequency, as if deliberately showing off. One day, it was Willow running all over the city to find snacks that had long been discontinued, just for him. The next day, it was Willow buying a globally limited, ultra-luxury watch and personally placing it into his hands. The day after that, it was Willow lowering her head and carefully bandaging his wounds. I scrolled through them one by one, as if self-harming, watching the tenderness that once belonged solely to me now completely transferred to Makoto. The sharp pain in my heart gradually dulled into numbness. I forced myself, little by little, to peel Willow out of my heart, until that place became so empty it could no longer hold her. The day I was discharged happened to be my mother's Memorial Day. Willow, who had promised to go with me to see my mother, never showed up. I let out a self-mocking smile, laughing at myself for still having expectations of her. I hailed a cab by the roadside. Just then, my phone lit up. It was a message from Willow. "George, something urgent came up at the company. Go to the cemetery first and wait for me. I'll be there soon." My fingers hovered over the screen for a long time. In the end, I still replied with a single word, "Okay." I was about to leave anyway. At the very least, before I left, I didn't want my mother to see me living badly. When the car reached the cemetery entrance, I got out and waited, from when the sun was high in the sky until dusk fell, yet Willow never appeared. The night wind carried a chill, blowing cold against my arms. My patience wore away bit by bit, and the warmth drained from my face as well. When the last trace of sunset finally faded from the horizon, I clenched my teeth, turned around, and started walking up the mountain alone. Halfway up, my phone chimed with a ding. A new message came in. It was a video. Chapter 7. In the video, Willow was wearing loose home clothes. Her head lowered as she focused on simmering soup. The camera shook slightly, and Makoto's smug voice came through. "Willow, didn't you say today you were going to accompany my brother? If you're here with me, what about him?" Willow didn't even look up. "If he can't wait, he'll naturally go back. No need to worry." After a pause, she added casually, "George has a very strong personality. No one can really bully him. Whether I'm there or not makes no difference. Unlike you, you're clearly weak, yet you still run around outside all the time." The video cut off abruptly, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I had waited from daylight until nightfall, standing alone at the cemetery entrance for hours. Yet to her, it was reduced to nothing more than, "If he can't wait, he'll go back on his own." I suddenly felt like a complete fool for still holding on to even the slightest expectation of her. She said, "Wait," and I stupidly waited for so long. Yet she not only didn't come, she couldn't even be bothered to say she wasn't coming. My heels ached sharply, but I didn't stop. Step by step, I walked steadily until I reached my mother's grave. Looking at the gentle smile on her photo, I finally couldn't hold it in anymore. With a soft thud, I collapsed onto the ground, tears pouring down like beads from a broken string. My past with Willow replayed before my eyes like a film, from the first flutter of attraction, to later dependence, and finally freezing on the moment before my death in my previous life, when she looked at me with utter indifference. I raised my hand and touched the tombstone, my voice choking. Mom, I'm leaving. I'm going very, very far, and I won't come back. Will you blame me? A soft breeze swept past, lifting the loose strands of hair on my forehead, like my mother's gentle hand stroking me. I sniffed and forced the tears back. Mom must be saying, "It's okay." I sat in front of the grave for a long time, until the horizon began to pale with dawn, before dragging my stiff body down the mountain. Just as I reached the cemetery entrance, a few sleazy-looking thugs suddenly blocked my path. I frowned and tried to go around them, but they deliberately stepped in front of me. Well, out here in the middle of nowhere, where you headed? The man in the lead grinned lazily, his gaze sticking to me in a way that made my skin crawl. My breathing tightened, anger gathering in my dark eyes. Move. Not only did they not move, they stepped closer instead. The leader reached out to grab my arm. Don't be so fierce. We're just looking for a little fun. I jerked away sharply, my expression darkening. There were too many of them. Fighting head-on wouldn't end well. Gritting my teeth, I seized the moment when they weren't paying attention and suddenly turned and ran. Rapid footsteps and ragged breathing tangled in my ears. My heart pounded as if it were about to explode. The footsteps behind me drew closer and closer. In my panic, I fumbled out my phone, my hand shaking so badly I had to press several times before the call went through. My emergency contact was Willow. The phone rang twice, then connected. Willow, save me. Someone's after me, I shouted urgently, not waiting for her to speak. Before my words fully fell, my foot caught on a protruding rock, and I crashed hard to the ground. My elbow and palm scraped open, burning with pain. I twisted my ankle too, sucking in a sharp breath from the agony. The other end of the line stayed silent. Panicking, I shouted again. Willow, did you hear me? Rustling sounds came through the receiver. After a few seconds, a familiar voice spoke. Brother. It was Makoto. Guess what? He said softly. Do you think Willow will come save you? All the color drained from my face. My blood seemed to freeze in my veins. I jerked my head up, only to see the men who had been chasing me already right in front of me. One of them lunging straight toward me. Chapter 8. Wrapped in the jacket a police officer had handed me, my body still trembling uncontrollably, I sat alone on a long bench inside the police station. Not far away, several thugs were squatting in a corner, being sternly reprimanded by the police. When Willow rushed in, she spotted my disheveled state at once. The wounds on my hands were still bleeding. My right ankle was swollen badly, and my clothes were smeared with mud and grass. She frowned and quickly walked over, squatting down in front of me. George, what happened? Did you get into trouble again? When she received the call from the police station, she hadn't even listened to the full details before hurrying over in a panic. I lifted my eyes. They were empty, hollow. If I hadn't struggled desperately and happened to grab the phone that had fallen to the ground, and if a patrol car hadn't passed by just in time, I would probably already be dead. Yet her first reaction was to assume that I had caused trouble. I pulled my lips into a smile, one so strained that tears streamed down uncontrollably. The sight made her heart tighten for no apparent reason. She was just about to say something when a nearby officer walked over and signaled that we could leave. Without a second's hesitation, I stood up and headed outside. She had no choice but to nod to the officer and hurry after me. She reached out to support my wrist, only then noticing that a large patch of skin there had been scraped raw, the dried blood stark against my pale skin. Her eyelashes trembled slightly. How did you end up like this? I didn't answer, only continued walking forward in silence. An inexplicable irritation rose in her chest. She couldn't figure out what kind of mood I was in, but the way I kept her at arm's length made her feel deeply uncomfortable. Forget it. I'll take you home first. She frowned, her tone tinged with helplessness. On the way back, I didn't say a single word. She only felt that I was too quiet. In the past, whenever I caused trouble, hadn't I always been loud and dramatic, making her clean up the mess? Today, though, I looked like someone whose soul had been completely drained. The atmosphere in the car grew heavier and heavier. By the time we reached the apartment building, neither of us had spoken a word. George, she called out to me. I glanced back at her, then turned and went inside. A moment later, I came back out carrying a pile of items. They were all gifts she had given me before. Right in front of her, I dumped everything into the trash can and flicked my lighter. Flames licked at the wrapping paper, crackling softly. She froze for a moment, then rushed forward. What are you doing? Yesterday, you didn't come to the cemetery. Where did you go? I stared at her, not letting a single change in her expression escape me. Her gaze flickered. She sighed. The company had an urgent matter that tied me up. You're angry because of this? My face was deathly pale. The last trace of light in my eyes went completely dark. I didn't look at her again. I simply watched quietly as the flames devoured the things I had once cherished, until they were reduced to a pile of ashes. Feeling better now? She looked at me, her tone probing. Before the words had fully settled, her phone suddenly rang. She answered it briefly, and her expression immediately grew impatient. After hanging up, she turned back to me. "I'll have someone send replacements for what you burned." I finally spoke, my voice hoarse. "No need. I don't need them anymore." Her heart constricted inexplicably, but she only assumed I was still throwing a tantrum. She rubbed her temples. "Fine. After we get married, whatever you want, I'll get it for you again." As she spoke, she glanced down at her phone messages, her feet already unconsciously moving toward the door. "I still have something to take care of, so I'll leave first. The bride and groom shouldn't see each other in the 3 days before the wedding. I won't come see you these next few days." "George." She turned back to look at me, impatience creeping into her voice. "You really should rein in that temper of yours. I can't keep cleaning up after you every single time." With that, she turned and left briskly, never looking back. I stood there, watching her retreating figure, a bitter smile tugging at the corner of my lips. "Willow, goodbye." My voice was very soft, so soft it was like a passing breeze, dispersing into the air the moment it left my lips. She seemed to pause for a brief second at the doorway, or maybe it was just my imagination. Soon, she walked away at a steady pace. I took out my phone. My father's message lay quietly on the screen. "The 1 billion has been transferred. Leave before the wedding." I packed up my belongings, entrusted David with handling the apartment, then went to the immigration office to collect my documents. From there, I took a car straight to the airport. At a trash can in the terminal, I snapped my SIM card in half and threw it away, then walked toward the boarding gate without looking back. The plane taxied, took off, and pierced through the clouds. Outside the window, the city gradually shrank into a tiny dot, until it disappeared completely. From then on, mountains and seas lay between us. No more ties. Chapter 9. Willow rushed to the company, where the relentless tide of work nearly drowned her. Documents piled high across her desk. She flipped through them page by page until her eyes began to ache, and only then did she look up toward the window. Just at that moment, an airplane swept across the sky, its tail carving a long white line against the clear blue expanse. For some reason, a sharp pain suddenly pierced her chest. An inexplicable sense of unease spread through her heart, as if something extremely important were slipping away from her. She frowned, raising a hand to press against her chest. Unbidden, George's face surfaced in her mind. In a haze, she remembered that when she left him earlier, he seemed to have said something. His voice had been too soft, she hadn't heard it clearly then, and now she couldn't recall it at all. Willow's grip on her pen tightened slightly. Something felt off. Was he still angry? George had always had a sharp, fierce temperament. Whenever he was wronged, he never hid it. There were countless people in their circle who had been openly shut down by him. Over the past month, she had indeed devoted more of her attention to Makoto. Perhaps she had neglected George. That might have been why he was so angry that he burned all those things. She sighed and pressed the call button on her desk. The secretary soon pushed the door open and stood respectfully in front of her. "Go and arrange for the latest seasonal clothes, watches, and accessories to be sent to George's apartment, one of each," Willow instructed. She looked up and added, "And keep a closer eye on the wedding details. Tell them to be extra attentive." The secretary nodded and was about to leave when Willow called out again. "Oh, right, the thing I asked you to look into. Any progress?" "There are some leads," the secretary replied, "but we still need to verify their accuracy." "All right." Willow twirled the pen between her fingers. "Let me know as soon as there's confirmed news." Ever since George's mother's keepsake had been broken, Willow had been looking for a chance to make it up to him. Ordinary gifts meant nothing to him, so she had people ask around. By chance, she learned that George's mother had once donated a sapphire necklace to a charity foundation. After changing hands several times, it had ended up with a private collector overseas. She immediately instructed her secretary to track down the necklace. No matter the price, it had to be bought. Imagining the look of surprise on George's face when he received it, Willow couldn't help but curve her lips into a smile. She picked up her phone and sent George a message. "I've had the latest clothes, watches, and accessories delivered to your apartment." Right after, she sent another. "George, I also prepared a gift for you. You'll definitely like it." There was no reply from him, but she wasn't worried. George was still in a bad mood. Once he cooled down, he would respond. Willow stayed busy at the office until late at night. When she finally finished everything and picked up her phone, it was already 1 in the morning. In her chat with George, only the 2 messages she had sent lay there, lonely and unanswered. Such a temper, she muttered softly, slipping her phone back into her pocket. A knock sounded at the office door. The secretary came in with a file and placed it on the desk. "President Liu, we found it. The necklace will be auctioned at the largest auction house in Country M, the day after tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. Would you like to send someone to?" "No need. I'll go myself." Willow stood up before the secretary could finish, grabbing the coat draped over the back of her chair. Book the nearest flight right now. I'm leaving immediately. But, the secretary hesitated. The auction is the day before your wedding. Won't that be too rushed? Maybe it'd be better to send someone you trust. I won't feel at ease if it's anyone else. Willow glanced at the time, her tone firm. There's enough time. As long as I secure the necklace, I can rush back right away. I'll definitely make it back in time for the wedding the next day. She wanted to personally place this surprise into George's hands. Chapter 10. Willow stayed in Country M for 2 days, pulling strings to secure entry to the auction house. That evening, she arrived at the venue right on time at 8:30 p.m. She wore a black evening gown, her figure graceful, an air of cool elegance and restrained nobility surrounding her. Several men came forward to strike up conversations, but she merely raised her hand slightly, showing the ring on her middle finger, and said flatly, "Sorry, I have a fiancé." Seeing this, the men could only leave awkwardly. When the sapphire necklace was brought onto the stage by an attendant, the entire hall erupted. The natural sapphires were crystal clear, flawless and pure. Bids rose one after another, the price soaring rapidly. 100 million. 300 million. 500 million. Only when the bidding began to slow did Willow calmly raise her paddle. 1 billion. The hall fell into dead silence. In the end, the necklace was won by her at the staggering price of 1 billion. The secretary had already booked a flight departing at dawn, and the two returned overnight. On the plane, the secretary glanced at Willow Lu several times, clearly hesitant to speak. Willow noticed and her gaze darkened slightly. "If you have something to say it. Don't beat around the bush." The secretary pressed her lips together and finally spoke. "President Lu, you're getting married to Mr. George tomorrow. Shouldn't you be keeping a bit more distance from his younger brother?" Willow looked up at her, the pressure around her instantly dropping. "What do you mean by that?" Since things had come to this point, the secretary decided to be frank. "President Lu, haven't you noticed, for the past month, whenever there was a choice between Mr. George and his younger brother, you always chose the latter. You're Mr. George's fiancé. Being this indecisive will make him doubt your feelings. Not just Mr. George, even we subordinates can't help but wonder whether you've had a change of heart and fallen for Mr. Makoto." A flicker of astonishment crossed Willow's eyes. "You think I like Makoto?" "It's not just me, many people think so," the secretary said, bracing herself. "If you don't like him, why treat him so well, at the cost of hurting Mr. George?" "That's because Makoto once saved me." Willow rubbed her temples, exhaustion evident in her voice. She had never imagined that her actions over this period would cause such a huge misunderstanding. In truth, at the beginning, she hadn't felt even the slightest fondness for Makoto. George's mother had died because of Makoto's mother. Willow had seen with her own eyes how difficult George Wang's life in the Wang family had been. Whoever bullied George, she would pay them back double, let alone Makoto, who constantly hovered around him. During that time, she had been utterly fed up with him. Yet it was precisely her cold attitude that, when that out-of-control truck came crashing toward them, led Makoto to suddenly shove her away. He himself was knocked down into a pool of blood. Because of that accident, one of his kidneys was pierced and severely damaged, ultimately having to be removed, leaving his body with irreversible injuries. From that day on, her attitude toward Makoto changed. She knew George hated Makoto, so she could only compensate him in secret, doing her best to satisfy his requests. She thought she had hidden it well, never expecting George would still find out. The one who caused George's mother's death was his mother. "It has nothing to do with Makoto," Willow said quietly. "He even saved me. I can't possibly place the grudges of the previous generation onto him." She simply hoped George could carry a little less hatred. Hating someone was too exhausting. "President Lu," the secretary said carefully, interrupting her thoughts. "Mr. George is actually a very good person. Don't let his flamboyant, domineering exterior fool you. He's never made things difficult for those of us working under him. When you were in a bad mood and none of the secretaries dared deliver documents, he would take them and say, 'I'll bring them in.'" Hearing this, Willow narrowed her eyes and asked coldly, "You like him?" The secretary instantly froze. Cold sweat broke out across her forehead, her heart racing. She hurriedly waved her hands. "No, President Lu, it's not like that. I don't like him. Mr. George once helped me. I just hope you'll treat him a little better. Besides, you and him grew up together. Everyone knows the person he's most attached to is you. Even if you gave me 100 times the courage, I wouldn't dare harbor any other thoughts." Willow's expression softened somewhat. She snorted lightly. "I figured you wouldn't dare." The cabin fell quiet. After a long while, Willow gazed out at the deep night beyond the window and suddenly spoke. "You're right. After the wedding is over, I'll make things clear to Makoto and keep my distance from him from now on." Chapter 11. By the time Willow returned to the country, it was already 3 in the morning. She only managed to nap lightly for 2 hours before heading straight to the wedding venue. The sapphire necklace was carefully tucked into the inner pocket of her wedding dress. She planned to give George a surprise after the vows were finished. After changing into her gown and completing her makeup and styling, an overwhelming urge to see George suddenly rose in her heart. She wanted to see what he looked like in his wedding attire. So she walked straight toward the groom's dressing room, only to be stopped by the staff guarding the door. President Liu. Madam gave instructions that it's best for the bride and groom not to meet before the wedding. Please don't make things difficult for us. The staff member looked troubled but firm. A trace of displeasure flashed through Willow's eyes. She clenched her back teeth slightly, but thinking that she would soon see him during the ceremony anyway, she ultimately suppressed her irritation and turned to leave. According to the schedule, she was to wait outside for her entrance. As she walked from the side entrance toward the main doors, she unexpectedly ran into George's father. Seeing her, the men hurried over with a face full of smiles. President Liu, from today on we're family. Please take good care of us. Willow's expression darkened instantly. She remembered very clearly, George had said he absolutely did not want this father of his to appear at the wedding. Why are you here? The smile on the man's face stiffened for a moment, but he forced himself to remain calm. Today is my son's wedding. As his father, I should at least be here to watch him get married. Watch him get married? Willow gave a cold laugh. The person George hates the most is you. Do you really think he'd agree to let you watch him get married? Don't be ridiculous. She dismissed him bluntly. Please leave. George won't want to see you. Of course, the man had no intention of leaving. He knew perfectly well that Willow would never agree to changing the engagement. So from the day George agreed, he had planned to hide it until the very end, to force things through after the fact. With so many prominent families present today, Willow wouldn't dare to cause a scene in public. What's more, Makoto had said it himself, Willow already treated him differently. Perhaps, deep down, she had feelings for him anyway. President Liu, no matter what, I'm still George's father, the men said stiffly, forcing a smile. If I'm not here on his wedding day, won't people say his family is fractured, that father and son are estranged? Willow Liu hated being threatened more than anything. Her voice turned completely cold. So what, with me here? Who would dare say a word? She stepped forward, the pressure around her surging sharply. You'd better leave now. Don't force me to take action. He agreed himself, the men blurted out anxiously, righteous and confident. I asked him, he agreed. Otherwise, how do you think I got in here? Isn't that proof enough? Willow froze, her brows knitting tightly. She truly hadn't received any message from George objecting to this. Could it be that he had tacitly allowed it? After a moment of hesitation, she finally compromised. Fine, but if you dare to cause any trouble at the wedding, don't blame me for being ruthless. With that, she turned and walked toward the main entrance. When the wedding march began to play, Willow stood at the doors holding her bouquet, her heart inexplicably tightening. She and George had known each other for over 20 years, growing up together, pledging their future to each other at 18. Now, she was finally going to marry him. This had nothing to do with the engagement. It was simply where her heart belonged. In the distance, the doors of the banquet hall slowly opened. The white veil was draped over Willow's head, blurring her vision. Through the gauzy fabric, she looked toward that familiar yet somehow unfamiliar figure, an inexplicable sense of unease stirring within her. But this was the wedding venue she had personally arranged. What could possibly go wrong? Step by step, she walked toward him, her heartbeat thunderous in her ears. When she finally placed her hand into his palm, her lips curved upward unconsciously. She slowly lifted her head, watching as the other person raised a hand and gently lifted her veil. The moment she saw that face, it was as if a bolt of lightning struck Willow head-on. Her entire body went rigid, frozen in place. Chapter 12. Why is it you? Willow's voice broke. Her eyes filled with shock as she stared at the face in front of her. Where's George? Makoto curved his lips into a smile and reached out to grab her hand. My brother gave the engagement to me. Willow, the one marrying you today is me. Willow's mind went buzz. She stared blankly at Makoto, repeating numbly. Gave it to you? What do you mean? Willow, I'm also a son of the Wang family. Makoto blinked, his tone utterly matter-of-fact. The Liu family is marrying into the Wang family. My brother didn't want it, so naturally it should be me instead. You know it too, there's actually me in your heart. What nonsense are you spouting? Willow violently shook his hand off. The force sent Makoto staggering backward before he fell heavily to the ground. Willow, Makoto's eyes instantly reddened, tears pooling as he looked up at her. There are so many people watching. Can't we just finish the wedding first? Who wants to go through a wedding with you? Willow shouted angrily, then abruptly turned to George's father standing to the side, her gaze icy as tempered steel. So this is why you dared show up today. Where did you hide, George? Who gave you the nerve to pull a switch like this? Her aura made his heart jolt, but he still forced a smile, pretending to stay calm. President Liu, you're misunderstanding me. George agreed to give up the engagement himself. I didn't force him. Otherwise, Even with 100 lives, I wouldn't dare pull tricks at your wedding. He paused, then added. Besides, Makoto is also my son. Since it's a marriage alliance anyway, who marries you makes no difference. And Makoto said it himself, you've been so good to him lately. You must have feelings for him. Who likes him? Willow's face darkened frighteningly. My engagement with George is between him and me. It has nothing to do with the Wong family. Who gave you permission to privately replace the groom? Hand George over. She stepped forward, the pressure around her so low it was suffocating. I don't believe for a second that he did this willingly. He hates you more than anyone. I know that better than anyone. There's no way he'd give up the engagement. Wong, she said coldly. Are you trying to force me to use harsher methods? George's father's face paled. In a panic, he pulled out his phone. He really agreed himself. I'm not lying. He opened a recording. George is cool. Emotionless voice played from the speaker. 10 billion. Plus cutting off our father-son relationship. In exchange for Makoto marrying into the Liu family. That's a pretty good deal. Willow's mind went completely blank. She stared at the phone, unable to believe what she was hearing, murmuring. How is that possible? How could that be? She suddenly spun around and ran toward the exit. I'm going to find George and ask him myself. Makoto, still sitting on the ground, panicked. He lunged forward and grabbed the hem of her dress, looking up at her with tear-filled eyes, trying desperately to evoke her sympathy. Willow, my brother already gave you to me. Even if you want to ask him, at least finish the wedding first. Okay. I've liked you for so long. I finally got the chance to marry you. Haven't you ever liked me even a little? You clearly treated me so well. By the end, his voice was choked with sobs, thick with grievance. No. Willow shattered his illusion without mercy. I have never liked you. I was only nice to you because you saved me. That's all. She enunciated every word coldly. I will not marry you. This wedding is cancelled. Makoto's face drained of all color. He clutched the hem of her dress tightly, refusing to let go. Willow yanked hard, breaking free of his grip. She couldn't even be bothered to spare him another glance, her mind filled with only one thought, finding George. Willow. Just as she was about to rush off the stage, Makoto's voice rang out from behind her, teetering on hysteria. Are you really going to abandon me and leave? If you don't get married today. He pulled out a small knife from somewhere and pressed it tremblingly against his own neck. Then I'll die. Willow's steps stopped abruptly. She slowly turned around. Makoto thought his threat had worked, hope immediately ignited in his eyes. But the next second, Willow's words slammed into him like ice wrapped in poison, each one stabbing straight into his heart. Then go die. Die far away. And never let me see you again for the rest of my life. Chapter 13. Willow rushed out of the wedding venue without looking back. She didn't even bother to change out of her gown before getting into her car and speeding toward George's apartment. She had to find George and get a clear answer why he would give up a perfectly good engagement. The car flew down the road. Willow ran several red lights in a row before stopping downstairs at George's place. She hurried upstairs, only to find that the door to his apartment was open. George. She pushed the door open, but the words died on her lips. George wasn't there. Inside were only his close friend David, and an unfamiliar woman. Willow frowned and asked coldly, "What are you doing here? Where's George? Aren't you getting married today?" David shot back, his tone sharp. "What are you doing here?" The two voices collided, and the air froze instantly. It was David who reacted first. He turned to the woman and said quietly, "Sorry, let's stop here for today." After she closed the door and left, he turned back to Willow. "George asked me to sell this apartment. I brought a buyer to see the place." "Sell it?" The color drained from Willow's face. George had already given up the engagement, and now he was even selling the apartment. Then what about him? Where was he going? In a panic, she fumbled for her phone and dialed George's number. Beep, beep. Before it rang 3 times, a cold mechanical female voice cut in. "The number you have dialed does not exist." Willow's grip on the phone tightened abruptly. "Impossible." She redialed, twice more. Each time, the same emotionless message echoed in her ear. Only then did she realize something was truly wrong. She snapped her head up and stared at David. "Why is he selling the apartment? Where is he right now?" David shook his head. "I don't know where he went." George didn't say. After a pause, he added, "As for the apartment, he said he won't be coming back anymore. So he asked me to sell it." Her heart felt as if an invisible hand had clenched around it violently. The pain made her vision go dark, her limbs going numb. Won't be coming back anymore. From the moment he gave up the engagement, had he already decided to leave himself no way back? David looked at her dazed expression and thought of the hollow look in George's eyes before he left. Finally, he couldn't help frowning. "President Liu, you were standing at someone else's wedding in a wedding dress. Why are you still asking about George now?" "I wasn't," Willow blurted out. "I didn't know the groom would be switched to Makoto. From beginning to end, the only person I ever wanted to marry was George." Her lips were deathly pale. I don't understand why he left, why he gave up the engagement. A flash of surprise crossed David's eyes. So she really didn't know. He had thought this absurd farce was something they had agreed on together. He pressed his lips together, his tone turning colder. I've known George for over 10 years. He's not someone who would do something like this for no reason. If you hadn't done something that completely broke his heart, how could he have left so decisively? Before he left, he was so thin he was basically skin and bones. David looked at her, pain in his eyes. Have you seen him like that? He used to be such a vivid, arrogant person, but when he stood there, he looked like grass beaten down by frost, no light left in his eyes at all. If you were capable of hurting him to that extent, then why pretend now that he's irreplaceable? David's words pierced Willow's heart like countless needles. I didn't do anything. Even as she said it, Willow felt dazed and uncertain. She suddenly realized that George's changes seemed to have started on the day they went to try on wedding outfits. That day, there was an earthquake. She abandoned George and took Makoto away first. Later, she lied and said she had urgent matters that day, and shortly after, George sold all the gifts she had given him. After that, because of Makoto, she had George detained for 3 days. She told herself it was just to temper his personality, to stop him from acting so impulsively. And there was also the time she chose to stay with Makoto instead of accompanying George to visit his mother's grave. The more she thought about it, the colder she felt. She suddenly remembered what her secretary had once said. If you don't like Mr. Makoto, then don't treat him so well. Otherwise, you'll only hurt Mr. George. So George had known all along. He had known about her lies, and about everything she did for Makoto. In his eyes, had he already believed that she had fallen in love with Makoto? Willow dug her nails deep into her palm. The pain made her shudder, but it was nothing compared to the agony in her chest. What had she done? All the strength drained from her body at once. Willow looked at David, her gaze humble, almost pleading. Please, tell me, where did he go? Chapter 14. David looked at her utterly distraught expression and turned his head aside, avoiding her gaze. I'm sorry, I really don't know where he went. I honestly can't tell you. Willow collapsed weakly onto the sofa. It felt as if her heart were being sliced open by a sharp blade, the pain so intense that even breathing made her tremble. After a long while, she finally spoke in a hoarse voice. Since this place is being sold, sell it to me. George had burned everything that belonged to the two of them. Now, the only thing left was this apartment. Unable to refuse her, David ultimately transferred the apartment into her name at the price George had specified. After buying the apartment, Willow returned to the company and immediately ordered her secretary to investigate George's whereabouts. She could not accept him disappearing without a trace. She had to find him and clear up every misunderstanding. President Liu. The secretary pushed the door open and placed a stack of documents on the desk. Did you find him? A spark of hope instantly lit up in Willow's eyes, but when she saw the secretary shake her head, that spark went out just as quickly, her heart plunging into despair. I found some things. You should probably see them yourself. The secretary's hesitant tone made it clear that what she had uncovered was anything but ordinary. In searching for George, they had traced everywhere he had been and everyone he had contacted before leaving, and unexpectedly dug up these hidden matters. Willow frowned, picked up the USB drive on the desk, and plugged it into the computer. There were only 2 videos in the folder. In the first video, surveillance footage from the detention center showed George being cornered by inmates in the same cell. Some yanked his hair, others kicked him. In the end, they even shoved filth from a trash bin toward his mouth. The second video was blurrier, seemingly captured by a roadside camera. George was running desperately along a mountain road, several sleazy-looking men chasing close behind. Willow stared fixedly at the screen, her face darkened inch by inch, until she was nearly crushing the mouse in her hand. The pressure around her was terrifyingly low. She suddenly looked up at the secretary, her gaze sharp as an ice-tempered blade. What exactly is going on? George, how could he have gone through things like this? The secretary slid another file over, her eyes filled with reluctance. The day you sent Mr. George into detention, someone used your name to grease the wheels inside and told them to take good care of him. Who was it? The secretary flipped a page and pushed the attached transfer records and chat screenshots in front of her. It was Makoto. Willow's heart clenched violently. She had never imagined that during those 3 days in detention, George had suffered such inhumane treatment. How dare he? Willow ground her back teeth together. There's more, the secretary continued. I checked Mr. George's call logs and messages from the past month. Makoto sent him quite a few provocative messages. And on the day Mr. George was harassed by thugs in the mountains, he called you. The call lasted 1 minute, then it was disconnected. At that, Willow suddenly remembered that morning when Makoto had taken her phone, saying he wanted to look something up. She hadn't paid it any mind then. Now, thinking back, that cut-off call for help had almost certainly been hung up by him. Not only had she failed to receive George's plea for help, afterward, She even accused him of always causing trouble, without asking a single question about what had actually happened. The secretary flipped through the documents page by page, laying out everything George had gone through during that time. Every word on those pages was like a knife, slicing into Willow's heart over and over again. She suddenly realized that George had grown quieter and quieter lately. He no longer clung to her like before, and even when he was wronged, he stopped asking her to stand up for him. She had thought he was finally learning to rein in his temper, but it turned out, he had already been completely disappointed in her. Willow's breathing grew rapid. Her temples throbbed violently, the pain making her vision go dark. She suddenly stood up. "Prepare the car. We're going to the Wang residence." Inside the Wang family villa, Makoto sat gloomily on the sofa. Ever since the wedding fiasco, he hadn't gone out at all, becoming the laughingstock of their entire circle. His father sighed. "Do you really have to have Willow?" A flicker passed through Makoto's eyes. Was he really so obsessed with Willow? Not at all. It was simply that George's fiancée was the heir to a top-tier elite family. He couldn't accept it. Why should George be allowed to have what he couldn't snatch away? He was just about to speak when the villa doors were suddenly kicked open with a deafening bang. The door slammed into the wall, dust shaking loose and falling. Willow stood at the entrance, backlit, her entire body radiating a terrifying chill. The moment Makoto saw her, his eyes lit up. "Willow, you're here too." Before he could finish, the look Willow shot at him froze the words in his throat. That gaze was far too sharp, like ice spikes stabbing into him, sending an involuntary chill through his body. "Willow, what's wrong with you?" Willow didn't respond. She merely raised her hand and waved it lightly. The bodyguards behind her immediately filed in, swiftly taking control of the scene. She curled her lips slightly, the coldness in her eyes deepening. Smash it. Chapter 15. The bodyguards, wielding steel pipes and axes, smashed viciously at the villa's furnishings right in front of the father and Makoto. Paintings, furniture, vases, everything was shattered to pieces in an instant. The father's face turned deathly pale. Trembling, he lunged forward. "President Liu, what are you doing? How has the Wang family offended you?" Willow curled her lips slightly. "Effective today, the Wang group will enter bankruptcy liquidation." Every word fell with crushing force. Makoto's pupils contracted sharply. As if struck by lightning, he froze in place, unable to move. The sounds of shattering all around him, his father's frantic cries, they made him tremble uncontrollably. Looking at the woman before him, cold to the point of cruelty, a deep fear rose in his heart. No, the father went mad, trying to grab Willow's arm. "For George's sake, President Liu, for George's sake, please spare us, I'm begging you." He babbled incoherently, clutching at George's name like a lifeline. Willow lifted her foot and kicked him away. The father staggered back and crashed into a coffee table with a broken leg, letting out a muffled groan of pain. "You dare mention George?" Her eyes were vicious. "You caused his mother's death, favored your illegitimate son for over 10 years, and now you still have the face to use him as a shield. Keep smashing," she barked. "Don't leave a single scrap behind." "No, please." Makoto's lips trembled. His former arrogance had completely vanished, leaving only terror. He looked at Willow, forcing out the pitiful expression he used to show. "Willow, please spare my father. I won't force you to marry me anymore, really. Just for the sake of me saving you back then. Let our family go this once, okay?" "Oh, so you still remember that life-saving favor of yours?" Willow turned to look at him. Her gaze was dark, as if it could swallow him whole. "Then who gave you the nerve to lay a hand on George?" All the blood in Makoto's body seemed to freeze instantly. Cold sweat broke out in his palms. He forced himself to stay calm, his smile uglier than crying. What are you talking about? I don't understand." "When you told the inmates in the detention center to take good care of him," Willow reminded him slowly, word by word. "You didn't look this clueless." Makoto felt as if he'd been doused in ice water, chilled from head to toe, shaking uncontrollably. She knew everything, and it didn't stop there. "When he was being chased by thugs and called me for help, you cut off that call, didn't you?" Willow continued coldly. "Because of that, he almost died at the hands of those beasts. And those messages meant to sow discord, deliberately making him misunderstand our chat records. Makoto, did you really think that just because you once saved me, you could act however you pleased in front of me?" With every sentence she spoke, Makoto's face grew paler. By the end, his lips were completely drained of color, his eyes filled with nothing but fear. He didn't dare imagine what awaited him. "No. Willow, I just loved you too much. I just wanted to marry you." He collapsed to the floor, tears and snot streaking his face. "I didn't mean it. Please spare me this once, okay? I swear I'll never disturb you and my brother again." He reached out to grab at Willow's pant leg, but she stepped back in disgust, avoiding his touch. "So desperate to climb into high society," Willow said coldly, her voice sharp enough to frost the air. That 40-year-old woman from the Wang group happens to be short of a plaything. I'll decide for your father and send you over. That way, you get to fulfill your dream of marrying into wealth, and I get to repay your favor. Isn't that perfect?" Her tone sounded almost conversational, but the icy finality in her eyes left no room for negotiation. "No, I don't want that," Makoto screamed, nearly hysterical. "Willow, I saved your life, didn't I? You can't do this to me. That woman has ruined so many men, you know it. I'd rather die than go." Willow looked at his crazed state with utter indifference. Not a ripple stirred in her heart. She turned her head and instructed the bodyguard beside her. "Send Mr. Wang over there. Keep a close eye on him. Don't let him escape." The Wang family villa was ultimately reduced to ruins. As Makoto was dragged out by the bodyguards, he continued screaming curses, his shrill voice fading farther and farther away. The father collapsed amid the debris, his eyes hollow, murmuring over and over, "It's over, it's all over." Willow Lu let out a cold laugh and turned to leave. Just as she reached the car, the secretary suddenly came running over, out of breath. "President Lu, we found Mr. George's whereabouts." Willow snapped her head around, a blazing light bursting into her eyes. "Really?" "Yes, it's confirmed, he's in London, England." The secretary handed over the flight information. "Book the fastest flight immediately. I'm flying there now," Willow said urgently, her hand clenched tightly around the sapphire necklace in her pocket, her knuckles turning white. "George, wait for me." She would find him, explain everything, and bring him home. No matter the cost, she had to bring him back to her side. Chapter 16. I lounged in a rattan recliner, the afternoon sun slanting through the glass display window and spilling warmly over my body, so soothing it made my bones feel boneless. I comfortably narrowed my peach blossom eyes, my fingers unconsciously tapping the armrest as the wind chimes tinkled now and then. The chimes at the door rang again, a crisp dingling. "Boss." Fluent American English floated in, and the visitor's gaze landed precisely on the lazy figure sprawled in the recliner. I lifted my eyelids, saw it was a regular, then closed my eyes again. "You again. Pick whatever you want to do today. Materials are on the shelf." A month ago, I moved to this seaside town, bought a small villa with a courtyard, and took over this corner storefront to open a handmade crafts shop. Life moved at an unhurried pace. There weren't many customers, and most of the time I just basked in the sun and let my mind wander. All those messy, suffocating troubles that had tangled me up for over half a year felt like fog blown away by the sea breeze, gradually fading until they left no trace. Until 2 weeks ago, when a woman named Anna pushed open the shop door and became a regular from then on. "Wang, can you teach me how to make a ceramic mug today?" Anna sat familiarly on the wooden stool across from me, her gaze resting on my sun-kissed profile. Long lashes, a high nose bridge, even the small dimple at the corner of her mouth seemed steeped in warmth. I let out a lazy hum. "The plates you made a few days ago are still in the kiln." "Anna, your enthusiasm for ceramics is really something. I've always been fascinated by Eastern craftsmanship." Anna smiled openly, her emerald green eyes sparkling like crushed diamonds in the sunlight. "Too bad I still haven't managed to complete a piece on my own. Even after coming so many times." She lowered her eyes slightly, disappointment coloring her voice. I laughed inwardly. Back when I was learning pottery, how many clay blanks had I smashed before getting the hang of it? If this foreigner mastered it in a couple of tries, wouldn't all my years of effort be a joke? I sat up from the recliner and dusted my hands. "Apron's on the hook. Put it on. I'll teach you." We walked to the workbench. I took a lump of clay, my fingers deftly kneading and shaping it as I demonstrated and explained. "Keep your palms steady. Pressure even. Use your thumb to press down from the center first. Yes, like that. Slowly push outward." I was explaining seriously when I looked up to ask, "Got it?" I unexpectedly crashed straight into a pair of emerald eyes full of starlight. Anna's pupils shrank abruptly, as if burned. She looked away, lowered her head, and hurriedly grabbed her own clay. Unfortunately, she was terribly clumsy. A perfectly good lump of clay was kneaded and rubbed in her hands until it turned into a shapeless mess. Seeing her ears turn bright red, I suddenly understood something. I deliberately dragged out my tone and asked, "Hey, tell me, you come running here every day, don't tell me your interest isn't really in pottery." I paused, watching Anna's body stiffen instantly, then added wickedly, "You wouldn't happen to be into me, would you?" The clay in Anna's hands dropped onto the wheel with a soft plop. Her face flushed visibly from the roots of her ears to her temples, her heart pounding like a drum, her fingers trembling. Sunlight streamed through the window, weaving a soft, fuzzy halo between us. When she didn't move for a long moment, my heart skipped. Did I really hit the mark? I was about to smooth things over when Anna suddenly looked up. Her emerald eyes reflected my figure clearly, shining almost too brightly. I felt a sudden panic, blinking instinctively. Even the tips of my ears began to heat up. Her gaze was far too focused, like a deep-sea vortex, tempting one to sink into it. I We spoke at the same time, then both stopped, an indescribable tension floating in the air. How about? I blinked quickly and broke the silence first. You go first. Anna took a deep breath, her throat bobbing slightly as she was just about to say the words she had held back for so long. I like. Ding-ling. The door chimes suddenly clanged, their crisp sound shattering the atmosphere. My heart thudded back into place. The nervous tension from just a moment ago hadn't faded yet. I hurriedly looked away, turned toward the door, and put on a habitual smile. Welcome. The words jammed in my throat halfway. The woman standing at the entrance had a wrinkled shirt and dark circles under her eyes, but those eyes locked onto me with frightening intensity. It felt as if all the blood in my body froze at once. I could only hear my own heartbeat. It was Willow. George, Willow said, her voice a little hoarse. I finally found you. Chapter 17. The smile on my face vanished instantly, my tone turning cold. What are you doing here? I tugged at the corner of my lips, mockery lacing my words. Aren't you supposed to be back home on your honeymoon with Makoto? What kind of act are you putting on by running all the way here? The words were like a poison-tipped dagger, stabbing straight into her heart, twisting her insides with pain. Her face went pale, her voice unsteady. I didn't marry him, George. The only person I ever wanted to marry was you. I narrowed my eyes, a trace of sarcasm flickering within them. She had protected Makoto so fiercely, since she liked doing that. I was more than happy to step aside. Running all the way here now to profess loyalty was nothing short of ridiculous. Oh, I responded flatly, my tone devoid of emotion. And what does that have to do with me? Her heart trembled. She forced a fragile smile with her dry, cracked lips. George, you really misunderstood. I've never liked Makoto. The only one in my heart has always been you. What happened in the detention center wasn't my doing. Makoto used my name to bribe those people. And missing your call that day was my fault. I truly didn't know you were in danger. The people who hurt you, I've already taken revenge on them. The Wong family is bankrupt, and Makoto has been sent away. Her words spilled out rapidly, as if she was afraid I would interrupt her, urgency filling her eyes. After she finished, my expression didn't change. I only asked calmly. And then? Her lips moved again, her voice softening. I know I was wrong. George, come back with me. Okay. I laughed. The sound was light, but it made her heart tighten inch by inch. Willow, when you gave my mother's keepsake to him and favored him at every turn, did you ever think about how I felt? When you left me alone on that mountain, did you ever consider that I might be in danger? You say you love me, but the one who stabbed me the deepest was also you. Don't use, I didn't know, as an excuse. If you hadn't indulged him again and again, would Makoto have dared to go that far? Whether you truly liked him or not, it was you who gave him the illusion that he could replace me. I closed my eyes, as if all my strength had been drained, my voice growing lighter. Go back. Don't come looking for me again. I stopped liking you a long time ago. Her eyes reddened instantly. She suddenly grabbed my wrist, staring at me stubbornly. George, we grew up together. More than 10 years of feelings. You can't, her voice choked. You can't throw me away completely just because I made one mistake. I didn't cheat. I was just confused for a moment. You can't treat me like this. Look at this. She hurriedly pulled out the sapphire necklace from her pocket and held it out to me. I found another keepsake your mother left behind. I looked at the necklace, my gaze wavering for a brief moment. Of course I recognized it, but compared to this necklace, something my mother had donated long ago, the wooden bead bracelet she wore all her life was the one I truly cherished. Willow, let's part on good terms. I forcefully pulled my wrist back. I don't like you anymore, and I don't hate you either. You bought the necklace with your own money. Keep it yourself. After moving here, I slowly came to understand that those grudges and entanglements that had bound me for most of my life should have been let go long ago. I had hated my father's favoritism, hated Makoto's malice, hated his mother's scheming. But after all the fighting and struggling, the one who was hurt the most was always me. I thought that if my mother were still alive, she would want me to live freely and at ease. So I let go of my hatred for them as well. Her heart seemed to be shredded by 1,000 cuts as she looked at me with almost pleading eyes. George, compared to our 10+ years together, my mistake really doesn't amount to much. Can't you give me a chance to make up for it? I took a deep breath, met her gaze, and asked slowly, word by word. You think I'm making a big deal out of nothing? The color drained from her face. She waved her hands in panic. That's not what I meant. You think it's not enough, that I'm just throwing a tantrum. But Willow, what you don't know is, we've already been married once. Her mind went buzz. She froze completely. She stared at me blankly and stammered. George, what do you mean? My eyes were eerily calm, but my words were like ice spikes, stabbing straight through her. You think I'm overreacting, but this isn't my first life. In my last life, you did marry me. But 3 years later, I discovered that you and Makoto already had a family together. Your child was 2 years old. You say now that you never liked him, but who knows? Maybe in a few years, you'd still cheat. Still build a family with him. Still have children together. Your betrayal, I've lived through it once. And once was more than enough. Chapter 18. Willow looked as if she had just heard something utterly absurd. Her eyes widened as she stared straight at George. George, don't joke with me like this. I've never done anything like that. Why should something I never did be pinned on me? Yes, the you now hasn't done it. My voice remained cold and steady, but I've already lived through it once. So I'm cutting my losses in time this life. What's wrong with that? The searing pain of being sent flying by a runaway truck seemed to linger in my limbs. When the memory of that near-death moment from my previous life surfaced, my hands trembled uncontrollably. I clenched my fists hard, forcing the panic down. I'm not going with you. Go back. And don't come looking for me again. My patience was completely spent, the irritation in my tone undisguised. But Willow acted as if she hadn't heard me at all. She reached out again to grab my arm. George, you can't treat me like this. You can't punish me for something I never did. Anna, who had been standing to the side, finally couldn't stand it anymore. She strode forward and blocked my way, her slender frame shielding me completely. Didn't you hear what he said? Stop harassing him. Both Willow and I froze for a moment. I instinctively reached for Anna's sleeve. Anna, it's fine. Who are you to interfere between me and George? Willow's furious shout drowned out my voice. The anger in her eyes was on the verge of erupting. Who I am isn't important, Anna said seriously. But he's made it clear, he doesn't like you anymore. If you keep pestering him, you'll only annoy him. The anger in Willow's chest flared instantly. Gritting her teeth, she reached out and shoved Anna. Get out of the way. Anna wasn't prepared. She staggered back 2 steps. I hurriedly reached out, grabbed her, and pulled her toward me. The distance between us closed in an instant. Once I was sure she was steady, I turned to Willow, fury blazing in my eyes. Willow, I'll say this one last time. I'm not going back with you. If you keep making a scene here, I'll call the police. Willow's gaze locked onto my hand gripping Anna's wrist. The sharply defined bones exposed beneath my fingers stabbed painfully at her eyes. Her eyes turned completely red. What's her relationship to you? You won't go back with me because of her, right? George, it hasn't even been that long, and you've already thrown away more than 10 years of what we had to be with someone else. What am I to you, then? Her words were like barbed hooks, scraping against my nerves again and again. My expression darkened further and further, until, when her last word fell, I raised my hand and slapped her across the face. Willow, you're the one who did wrong. What right do you have to question me? Who I'm with, is that any of your business? Get out. Get the hell out of my shop. As I spoke, I shoved her toward the door. Willow was stunned by the slap. When she finally processed what I had said, her face turned deathly pale. George, that's not what I meant, she rushed to explain. Yet her feet remained stubbornly planted, unwilling to move. I gritted my teeth and called out, Anna. Anna immediately stepped forward. Together, we forced Willow toward the exit. Bang. The shop door slammed shut hard in front of Willow. Right after that, the curtains over the glass windows were pulled down, completely cutting off her view. Willow stood frozen outside the door, her face white as paper. In a daze, she suddenly remembered the day George confessed to her. It was the day after she had turned 18. George had domineeringly cornered her at the mouth of an alley, lifting his chin in forced bravado as he asked, Willow, even though we're engaged, I still want to ask, do you like me? Back then, George's brows were bright, his eyes vivid. There was a hint of reckless arrogance about him, but he had never looked more alive. She had always known she was supposed to marry George. That had been a rule set by their elders. Later, when she protected him, she told herself it was merely fulfilling her duty as his fiancée. But that day, looking into his sparkling eyes, she heard her own heartbeat accelerate clearly for the first time. Somehow, without realizing it, she had already lost her heart to this person who burned like a raging fire. He had once been an inextinguishable flame in her world, burning hot and bright, and now, she had extinguished that flame with her own hands. Chapter 19. Willow returned to the hotel in a daze. She had taken the earliest flight over. The moment she landed, she hadn't even paused to catch her breath before frantically searching for George. Now, it felt as if all the strength had been drained from her body. Lifting even a finger took effort. She didn't know how to win George back, but one thing she knew with absolute clarity was this: she couldn't lose him. She collapsed onto the bed. Overwhelming exhaustion washed over her, fragments of distorted images flashing before her eyes. Half awake and half asleep, she fell into a dream. In the dream was the past life George had spoken of. She floated in midair like an outsider, watching another version of herself do things that felt both familiar and foreign. At that lifetime's wedding, Makoto had once again threatened suicide. Back then, her gaze had been even colder than it was now. She had tossed out a single line, if you're going to die, do it far away, then turned around and took George's hand. She thought that was the end, until a year later, when she ran into Makoto on the street. He was holding a newborn baby. his face deathly pale as he blocked her path. He said that after jumping into the sea, he had been rescued by fishermen. He claimed he'd lost his memory, gotten married, and had a child, but now his wife had died in childbirth. With nowhere left to turn, he had finally remembered her. Out of that lingering sense of gratitude for saving her life, she rented him a place in the outskirts of the city, gave him some money, and occasionally went to check on him. From beginning to end, she remembered clearly that she was George's wife. She never crossed the line. At the very end of the dream, she saw herself suddenly lose control when her gaze landed on the men who had been sent flying by a collision not far away. She rushed over like a madwoman, cradling George's already lifeless body in her arms, wailing in despair. The overwhelming grief drowned her. She jolted awake from the dream, tears soaking the pillow. Her throat burned with dryness, and her heart felt as if it had been torn apart by force, aching unbearably. She stared blankly at the ceiling for a long moment. Then, all of a sudden, she got up, threw on her clothes, and rushed straight toward George's shop. Chapter 20. I was still the same as usual, with few customers in the shop. I lay back in the recliner, swaying leisurely. The wind chimes by the door rang. I lifted the book covering my face and turned my head toward the entrance. Welcome. My words came to an abrupt halt again. Why are you here again? A flicker of impatience crossed my face. Wasn't what I said yesterday clear enough? Willow opened her mouth, then quickly walked over and squatted in front of me, unconsciously rubbing the corner of her clothes. George, I dreamed about the past life you talked about. I hadn't expected her to say that. I froze for a moment. Her voice was hoarse as she continued. I saw everything. I saw it all, and I saw you die under that truck. So, my voice was cold. What exactly are you trying to say? I didn't cheat. Willow looked at me seriously. Everything you saw wasn't real. Makoto's child isn't mine. I just happened to run into him on the street after he survived, and I helped him and his child. That's all. George, she grabbed my hand tightly. I never betrayed you. No matter whether it was in your past life or this one. The only person I've ever loved is you. George, could you give me one more chance? Her eyes reddened, tears trembling on the brink. I had never seen Willow like this, so humble, begging someone just for forgiveness. I sighed softly, but my death was real. Whether you betrayed me or not, the fact that you hid your contact with Makoto from me is undeniable. You know exactly how my mother died. Willow, she was pregnant, and Makoto's mother angered her so badly that both mother and child died. My unborn brother didn't even get the chance to see this world before he stopped breathing. You say Makoto's mother's sins had nothing to do with him, then who is going to pay for my brother's life? You should have known how I would react once I found out you were in contact with him, yet you still chose to do it. From beginning to end, you never asked for my opinion, and you never considered my feelings. I stared straight at her. Each accusation was like an arrow, piercing her heart one after another. Wrong is wrong. With me, there is no forgiveness, and I will never turn back. Willow's face went deathly pale. She collapsed weakly onto the floor, muttering over and over. George, you can't just sentence me to death like this. The wind chimes rang again as Anna pushed the door open, a bag of freshly baked cookies in her hand. Wong, she called out cheerfully, but her gaze collided with Willow's bloodshot eyes. Anna paused, then frowned. She's here bothering you again. Do you need me to ask her to leave? I glanced at Willow slumped on the floor, then at Anna by the door, and beckoned her over. Anna walked over in confusion. As soon as she stopped, I stood up from the recliner, went straight to her side, then raised my voice. Willow. Willow turned her head blankly, her eyes hollow. I reached out and linked my arm through Anna's, lifted my head to meet Willow's gaze, and said clearly, word by word, you asked me yesterday what my relationship with her is. Now I'll tell you. I have feelings for her, and I plan to start a new life. I truly don't love you anymore, so stop coming to look for me, all right? Willow's breathing stopped short. Her gaze glued itself to our intertwined arms, as if she'd seen a ghost. George, you're lying to me, right? Deep down, she desperately rejected the reality before her. 2 lifetimes of entanglement. How could it lose to a foreign woman he'd known for less than a month? You must be doing this just to force me to let go. That's why. The rest of her words stuck in her throat, because she watched with her own eyes as I lowered my head and placed a light kiss on Anna's cheek. Anna's brain completely crashed. Her face flushed bright red, like someone had splashed a bucket of paint on her. She pointed at herself, then at me, stammering for a long time before managing. You. I had no time to deal with her panic. I only looked at Willow. Do you believe it now? You know my personality. Once I decide something, I never turn back. I can love deeply, and I can let go completely. Willow. From the moment you hurt me for Makoto the first time, we were already finished. Willow stared at me standing openly beside Anna. At the intimacy of our linked arms, crimson flooded her eyes in an instant. She couldn't stay there any longer. She scrambled to her feet and fled in panic. She didn't dare believe it, couldn't believe it. She had truly, completely lost me. The wind chimes fell silent with the closing of the door. The shop returned to its quiet calm. Anna still stood there in a daze. I let go of her arm, my tone apologetic. Sorry, I didn't tell you in advance and used you like that. Anna opened her mouth, memories of our first meeting flashing through her mind. That day, the sunlight had been just right. George sat at the workbench kneading clay, his side profile rimmed with gold, like someone stepping out of a painting. At first, she admitted, she had been drawn to that image, but gradually she realized, George wasn't gentle water at all. He was a flame hiding sharp edges. When lounging in the recliner, he looked like a cat basking in the sun. But when things got serious, he could shut down even the most troublesome customers without missing a beat. He had his own edges and corners, never wronged himself. How could someone so vivid not make a heart race? Was it just acting? Her voice was very soft, so soft it scattered with the wind. I didn't hear clearly and asked instinctively, "What did you say?" Anna pressed her lips together. Suddenly, her eyes lit up as she looked at me, as if she'd gathered all the courage she'd ever had. Her emerald green eyes were filled with sincerity as she said slowly, clearly, "Wong, I don't mind how you use me. I just hope I won't be just someone you use. That day, you asked me whether I liked you. I didn't get the chance to answer. Now I'll tell you clearly, George, I like you." Chapter 21. My hand, which had just reached out for the clay, froze midair, my fingertips suspended. I truly hadn't expected Anna to confess at that moment. It felt as if my ears had been scalded. Heat rushed up instantly. When I turned my head, I ran straight into those emerald green eyes. I had long known how dangerously captivating those eyes were when she looked at someone seriously. Facing them up close now, my heartbeat still skipped a beat. In less than a second, I hurriedly looked away, my fingers unconsciously digging into the edge of the work table. "Anna, why do you like me?" My eyelashes trembled lightly, my voice barely above a whisper. Anna tilted her head. "Does liking someone need a reason?" I pressed my lips together and said again, "But I might not be the person you imagine. I don't need to imagine you." Anna leaned forward slightly, her tone unusually earnest. The George I C shares unsold bread with the homeless man on the street corner, argues his case calmly when customers nitpick, and lights up when he's shaping clay. Someone who's like the sun, warm and bright. Isn't it normal to fall for the sun? Her words made my cheeks burn. In all my years, no one had ever praised me so directly. Back when I was with Willow, what I heard most were words like arrogant and overbearing. People didn't even bother to understand me before slapping labels on me. But now, someone was saying I was like the sun. Still, I wasn't ready to start over. As if she had seen through my hesitation, Anna smiled and relaxed her tone. "There's no rush to answer me, and you don't need to feel pressured. I just wanted you to know how I feel." I opened my mouth, then finally just said softly, "Thank you. Feelings aren't a game." I couldn't make a decision so rashly. I need some time to figure out my own heart. "Anna, I can't give you an answer right now." Anna's eyes curved into a smile. "That's fine. Your feelings matter most." From that day on, our relationship returned to how it had been before. I had to admit, Anna had an excellent sense of boundaries. Even after making her feelings clear, she never pressured me in the slightest. She still came by the shop as usual, sat around, talked about ceramics, shared little stories. My life settled back into calm. The wind chimes on the door rang again and again, but Willow never appeared. I thought my decisiveness that day had finally made her give up, until one evening, after closing the shop and heading home, I opened the door and found Willow sitting on the sofa in my living room. Her hair was disheveled, her eye sockets sunken. She looked utterly haggard. "How did you get in?" My hand plunged into my pocket, gripping my phone. My finger hovered over the emergency call button as my heart hammered violently in my chest. Willow slowly lifted her gaze. Her eyes were bloodshot as she forced a smile that looked worse than crying. "George, I can't just stand by and watch you be with someone else. We were clearly about to get married." A strong sense of unease surged up inside me. I stared at her warily and asked again, "What exactly do you want to do?" Willow looked at me and smiled. "You'll find out very soon." Before I could even step back, a sharp pain exploded at the back of my neck. My vision went black, and I lost consciousness completely. When I opened my eyes again, the first thing I saw was a familiar ceiling. I jolted upright and looked around. The wall art, the green plants by the window, even the desk lamp I'd used for years, all of it told me one unmistakable fact. This was my small apartment in the capital. Why was I back here? I threw off the blanket and jumped out of bed, about to rush for the door, when it suddenly opened from the outside. Willow walked in carrying a bowl of porridge. She was wearing the gray loungewear I had bought for her, smiling as naturally as ever. "You're awake. I just made some porridge. Come eat a little." I stayed where I was, my gaze icy. "What do you think you're doing?" Willow set the bowl on the bedside table. When she turned back around, there was a kind of almost obsessive tenderness in her eyes. "In 1 week," she said softly, "it will be our wedding." Chapter 22. I will not marry you. Rage surged in my chest. Everything in front of me felt so absurd it was almost laughable. Willow acted as if she hadn't heard a word. She continued calmly. I've had several new wedding outfits custom made. Eat first. After that, I'll take you to try them on. She reached out to pull me, but I shook her hand off hard. I turned and bolted for the door, wanting nothing more than to escape this place immediately. What surprised me was that Willow didn't stop me. Not until I pushed the door open did I understand why she was so confident. Outside wasn't the capital's streets at all, it was a vast estate. A standalone villa stood alone in the middle of a lawn. In the distance, people who looked like servants moved back and forth. Dense woods surrounded the area, stretching endlessly as far as the eye could see. Where is this? I spun around and glared at Willow, who had followed me out at an unhurried pace. My private island. Willow replied flatly. George, don't worry. No one can find this place. All you need to do is marry me in peace. This is kidnapping. I ground my teeth, my whole body trembling. So what? Willow's eyes reddened, her voice laced with obsession. As long as I can be with you, I'm willing to do anything. You're insane. I was shaking with cold fury, my fists clenched so tightly they hurt. Willow didn't argue. She just looked at me stubbornly. During the days George had disappeared, she had already gone mad enough to spend every waking moment thinking about how to capture him, lock him by her side, and never let him leave again. Over the next few days, Willow did everything she could to be good to me. The estate was filled with freesias, my former favorite, sweet fragrance lingering in the air. Crates of clothes and watches were delivered into the room, filling half the walk-in closet. The kitchen was on standby 24 hours a day. Fresh ingredients flown in by air were turned into dishes I loved, one after another. She believed that if she was good enough, my heart would eventually soften. Until the morning of the third day, when a servant rushed in, panic-stricken, to report that I hadn't eaten anything for a full day and night. When Willow stormed into the room, I was sprawled on the bed, my face pale, my eyes empty as I stared at the ceiling. The torture I'd endured in detention had already damaged my health. After 2 days without a single bite of food, I didn't even have the strength to lift my hand. You really don't want to marry me that badly? Willow rushed over with a bowl of porridge, yanking me up from the bed, her tone sharp with urgency and anger. I closed my eyes, my voice resolute. Yes, unless I die. The words were like a poison blade, stabbing straight into Willow's heart. Veins bulged on the hand gripping the spoon as she suddenly pulled out her phone and made a call. Moments later, a tablet was placed in front of me. The screen lit up, revealing Anna's anxious face. She was on a seaside street, asking people around frantically, holding missing notices printed with my photo. Ever since you disappeared, she's been looking for you. Willow's cold voice rang out. If you refuse to eat, I'll have her brought here. If you starve for a few days, she'll starve for a few days. If you dare to die, she'll die with you. George, can you really bear to watch her die for you? My eyes flew open, staring at the woman's frantic expression on the screen. It felt as if my heart were being crushed in a vice. For the first time, Willow felt utterly unfamiliar to me, so unfamiliar it chilled me to the bone. Madwoman. I cursed through clenched teeth, yet tears spilled out uncontrollably. Willow brought the spoon to my lips again and repeated, "Are you eating?" I stared at the screen for a long time. In the end, I trembled and opened my mouth, watching me swallow the food in small bites. Willow finally relaxed, but deep inside, a fierce jealousy flared. She had never imagined that I would compromise this far for another woman. After I finished half a bowl of porridge, Willow asked hoarsely, "Do you care about her that much? So much that you'd rather wrong yourself than let anything happen to her?" Yes. I looked up, my gaze unwavering. "I told you long ago, I have feelings for her. Thanks to you." I paused, every word like a knife plunging into Willow's heart. "I can say this clearly now. I'm already in love with her." Chapter 23. Willow's face drained of all color in an instant. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. Looking at her like this, a streak of malicious satisfaction rose in my chest. I deliberately slowed my voice and continued, "If it weren't for you, I probably would have been dating her normally, falling in love, getting married, maybe by now. I'd even have a cute child." "Stop it," Willow suddenly screamed, her eyes bloodshot. "George, please, don't say any more." "Heh." I let out a cold laugh. "You should understand this much. From the moment you kidnapped me here and forced me to marry you, all I have left for you is hatred." Willow couldn't listen anymore. She staggered to her feet and fled in panic once again. I watched her retreating figure, the warmth in my eyes fading bit by bit. I had to find a way out of this place, fast. I could not let her control my life any longer. Early the next morning, I learned from the servants that Willow had been forced to fly back to deal with an urgent pileup of company matters. This was my chance. My eyes flicked, and I called over the nearest maid. "Use your phone to check on the current situation of the Wong group." Willow said she got revenge for me. "I want to see what kind of end that father and son actually met." The maid hesitated, her face full of difficulty. This. President Liu instructed us not to let you use anything that can contact the outside world. I'm not asking to take your phone. I narrowed my eyes, my tone carrying pressure. You hold it. I'll just watch from the side. Do you think I can run away? She was still hesitant, so I switched to a threatening tone. What? You won't even listen to me now? If Willow finds out that the person she cares about most can't even command a servant, what do you think she'll do to punish you? At the mention of Willow, the maid visibly shrank back. She gritted her teeth, thinking that checking for just a few minutes shouldn't cause trouble, and unlocked her phone. Opening the search page, I pretended to focus on the screen. Out of the corner of my eye, I glanced at the glass of milk on the table. Suddenly, my hand slipped. With a loud clang, the glass fell to the floor, milk splashing all over me. What are you standing there for? I raised my voice sharply, anger written all over my face. Hurry up and get me a clean set of clothes, and clean this up while you're at it. Startled by my sudden outburst, the maid hurriedly crouched down to wipe the floor, completely forgetting the phone she'd left on the sofa. The moment her figure disappeared around the corner of the hallway, I grabbed the phone. My fingers flew. I sent the same message to David, to Anna, and even to the police's anonymous tip email. Help me. After it, I attached the rough coordinates I'd just captured using a location app while the maid wasn't paying attention. Once the messages were sent, I quickly deleted all traces, powered the phone off, and casually tossed it back onto the sofa. What a trash phone, I muttered as I stood up. It freezes just checking something. Then I walked straight back to my room. All that was left was the maid, who returned later to find the powered-off phone and broke out in a cold sweat, but didn't dare ask a single question. Lying on the bed, my heart was in turmoil. I didn't know whether the messages had gone through, or how long it would take them to find this isolated private island even if they had. This place was full of Willow's people. It was hard enough for me to step into the courtyard, let alone escape on my own. By evening, when the maid brought dinner, she said, President Liu has too much to handle. She probably won't be back until late at night. She asked you not to wait for her and to rest early. As if I'd wait for her. I sneered. She really thinks too highly of herself. After eating, I didn't even bother staying in the living room and went straight back to my bedroom. Lying on the bed, I was still wondering whether I should try to pass on another message tomorrow when a massive roaring sound suddenly came from outside the window. A helicopter. I frowned, thinking Willow had returned. But soon, chaotic footsteps and shouted voices echoed outside. Then, my bedroom door was kicked open. George. It was David's voice. My heart jolted violently as I shot up from the bed. At the doorway, David stood there, his face full of anxiety. When he saw I was unharmed, he clearly let out a breath of relief. David stepped slightly to the side, revealing the person behind him. Anna's face appeared at the door. Those green eyes that always carried a smile were now filled with worry and urgency. George. Anna rushed toward me, stopping just a few steps away. Chapter 24. You too. I stared at the pair at the doorway, so shocked I couldn't get a full sentence out. David was already striding forward. He grabbed my hand and pulled me into a run. No time to explain. Get out of here first. He dragged me forward at full speed, while Anna stayed to our side, blocking the servants who rushed up one after another. What's going on, David? How did you end up coming with her? I asked breathlessly as we ran. As soon as I got your distress message, I had people investigate, David said rapidly. That's when I found out Willow brought you to this island. But I didn't have enough manpower to be confident about getting you out right under Willow's nose. Then she came to me herself, said she knew you, and wanted to work with me. He shot me a look, half teasing. Not bad. Where did you meet a rich young lady like this? She's the heir to an old European aristocratic family. If she hadn't mobilized her private armed forces, there's no guarantee we'd even be standing here today. What? I froze for a moment. I'd always thought Anna was just an ordinary foreigner who liked pottery. I never imagined she had a background like this. The three of us had just reached the helicopter when hurried footsteps suddenly sounded behind us. Willow returned with a group of bodyguards. Her black coat was whipped up by the sea wind, her face covered in frost. George, come here. Her gaze was locked tightly on me, sheltered behind Anna. Instinctively, I shrank back a step. Anna, however, calmly moved half a step forward, completely blocking me behind her. Miss, barging onto someone else's territory to take a person isn't very proper, is it? Willow's eyes fell on Anna, her hostility undisguised. George doesn't belong to anyone, Anna replied firmly. You illegally detained him. That already violates the law. I'm just here to take him away. Leave him behind, and I'll let you all go. Willow waved her hand. Her bodyguards immediately formed a semicircle. Otherwise, all of you stay here. My heart jumped to my throat. I gripped David's hand tighter and tighter. David, we. Before I could finish, a thunderous roar came from the sky. 3 helicopters broke through the clouds, blinding spotlights shining straight down onto Willow. A cold warning boomed through loudspeakers. All ground personnel, put down your weapons immediately and submit to inspection. Anna looked at Willow and curled her lips into a cold smile. Did you really think we came alone? Willow's face instantly turned iron gray. She couldn't lose George. Absolutely couldn't. Once George left, he would never come back. A crazed light flashed in her eyes. She suddenly pulled a gun from her waist, the dark muzzle aimed straight at Anna. George, come here, or I'll drag her to hell with me. Don't. I burst out from behind Anna, throwing myself in front of her. Willow, if you're going to shoot, shoot me first. Willow's hand trembled violently. The gun wavered between us as tears finally spilled from her reddened eyes. You really have to leave. You won't even give me one last chance. Yes. My voice was unwavering. Seeing the resolve in my eyes, it felt as though Willow's heart had been torn open. She suddenly turned the gun toward her own temple, forcing a bleak smile. Fine, I'll grant your wish. Bang. The gunshot echoed across the empty estate, jolting everyone's eardrums. Willow collapsed straight backward. Blood spread across the grass. I stood frozen in place, a loud ringing filling my ears as the world blurred. George, don't look. Anna quickly covered my eyes, forcing me to turn away. Leave this to the police. Let's go. David grabbed my arm too, his voice thick with emotion. Come on, George, let's go home. Like a puppet with its strings cut, I was half supported, half carried onto the helicopter. As it lifted off, I looked down through the window. All I saw was a crowd surrounding Willow, that glaring red stark against the green lawn. As we rose higher, it shrank into a blurry dot. Are you okay? Anna's voice sounded beside me, cautious and gentle. I slowly shook my head. My eyes burned red despite myself. Suddenly, an image from years ago flashed through my mind. I had been locked in the attic punishment room by my father. In the darkness, it was Willow who kicked the door open, backlit by the light, reaching out to me. Don't be afraid. I'm here. No one can bully you. Back then, she was the light of my life, but later, that light turned into a fire that burned me. The helicopter pierced through the clouds. Sunlight streamed through the window onto my face. I closed my eyes and whispered silently, goodbye, Willow. In this life, all debts are settled. We will never see each other again.